our second date was really interesting.
Oh my God, I need to prepare my company financials and 5-year growth plan. I could not get in touch with her, and she had met with an accident. You're making me look so bad, by the way, here.
Oh, really?
No,
I shouldn't say
kidding.
this.
My name is Rahul Subramaniam. I'm one of the co-founders of Verona.
Hi, I'm Sanya Goyal. I work in the food industry. I have my own startup which makes seasonings, which is a B2B business. I got my undergrad degree from the University of Chicago in economics, and I got my MBA from INSEAD. I'm Rahul Subramaniam's wife, and just as of 2 months ago, we gave birth to our son. I gave birth to our son. So my first impression of Rahul was that he's incredibly well dressed. I remember he showed up in a little spiffy waistcoat and shirt, whereas most guys would probably just show up in jeans and a casual polo or something. Although he was late by 2 minutes, so I did not appreciate that as somebody who's a stickler for time. But when I met him, I thought he was incredibly smart, very driven as a person. Rahul moved from the US to India to start his own business, so he's obviously a self-starter, which is something that I really appreciated coming from a family of business people who have restarted them and re-established themselves multiple times over. So it was a value I could relate to a lot. I also thought he was incredibly deep as a person because some of the topics that we touched upon, just even upon the first date, were not so run-of-the-mill. And I thought he was quite nice and charming as well.
I remember what Sanya wore. I mean, she was very chic. You had this top with the elbow cut out.
Oh, the jumpsuit?
Oh, yes. And then all I remember, the most notable conversation topic was Hannah Arendt, who is a fairly obscure World War II historian. And I was like, here's a girl who's quoting Hannah Arendt on a first date. I'm sold.
I was actually impressed you knew Hannah Arendt as well. But then I realized it was thanks to your political science background.
That's true.
I think you mentioned it after the first date of, I think when we're leaving, if we'd like to meet again, and the answer was kind of like yes. I just thought he was an interesting person to talk to, and there could be more substantial conversations as well.
You want to talk about the second date?
Oh yeah, I can. Sorry. So our second date was really interesting actually. It's one of my favorites. I think we covered a lot of ground that day, and it was a very versatile kind of a day. I recall we started off, with a dinner at Delhi Clubhouse, and Rahul was talking about his upbringing in the US, his family. So it was a very nice, glimpse into who he is as a person, his time before coming to India, and then we went to a jazz club where we were just listening to music and dancing. And I don't think we actually spoke that much, which was also very interesting. But I think when you can be silent with somebody and find comfort in silence, that's quite remarkable. And we actually ended up in a typical Californian way, drinking avocado milkshakes at midnight. So I just really liked the date because it helped me understand a lot of different facets to his personality. And I thought that's quite nice because you can understand the person a lot better.
Yeah, I think what I really enjoyed was how many different things we did in the first year. I mean, we went shopping together, we went to art museums together, we went to the zoo together. That's a story in itself. But I think it was so wonderful seeing Sanya in so many different contexts, and everywhere she had some unique insights, and I think it just went deeper and deeper and deeper.
Honestly, I thought we started talking about the serious stuff during the third date because I remember my parents kicking up a little bit of a fuss, being like, we only wanted you to meet this guy once, and why are you meeting him so many times? And I was in a really terrible mood by the time I went to the third date. I recall I showed up in jeans and a Led Zeppelin t-shirt, so not even really bothering to dress up for the date. And I went up to Rahul and told him that, this is where it's at. And I think he gave a very interesting response, which I remember and value to this day. He kind of said, first and foremost, my relationship is with you. What you think and say matters the most, and everything else, whether it's our families, whether it's other people, is all secondary. to the relationship. And I really respected that. So for me, I think right after that, he was leaving for the US and I was leaving for Singapore. And the thought hit me that what if we don't stay in touch? Because, there's really no telling. I think that's when I realized that he's somebody I have kind of grown to like and respect as a person.
But I did want to impress your parents as well. I remember when they invited me for lunch. She was in Singapore for her MBA. And they invited me for a Sunday brunch at La Piazza. And I was like, oh my God, I need to prepare my company financials and 5-year growth plan. But they were very gracious. I even had a dinner with just mom. We had a one-on-one kind of evening. And I think it really gave me an opportunity to open up and share who I am. And I think they appreciate that as well. So because Sanya was in Singapore, it was really difficult. So, we would work Monday to Saturday. So Saturday night in India, I would go straight to the airport, take a red-eye flight, land in Singapore early morning. Sanya would pick me up. We'd spend the day together. And then early morning, Monday, 5 a.m., I'd take a flight back to India. I'd gain 3 hours or 2.5 hours and then come straight to work. And I think we did that 3 times.
Because we were long distance very early on into our relationship, so most of our conversations were over the phone. Besides Rahul's, monthly visits or alternate monthly visits to Singapore, we would, touch upon everything that you can think of, whether it was our past, present, our hopes for the future. And we found a lot of mutual ground and a lot of mutual shared interests, ambitions, hopes for ourselves, shared values. And I think that was really important in realizing that we're compatible beyond, also the level of attraction and just general chemistry that people have.
I remember seeing Sanya's spreadsheet for the first time, and it didn't matter what the spreadsheet contained. I was like, she has a spreadsheet and she had categorized questions by every area of life. And she's like, you can take your time at your leisure. You can respond to these questions. So I think it was great to have that tool and to be very systematic as opposed to kind of going on gut alone, really thinking through, what are potential challenges down the road and how will we make a decision? I think that continues to guide us today. I think whenever there's any kind of challenge, it's like, I know how Sanya is going to respond. I hope she feels the same way. And we're just in lockstep. And if there's some discrepancy, we can resolve that very quickly. So I think doing a lot of that hard work beforehand has really come in handy. Actually, during the 3rd visit to Singapore, I still remember that distinctly. I had got my bags and I was super excited Sanya was coming to pick me up. And she even sent me her location and it was like getting closer and closer and closer and then just stopped. And I could not get in touch with her. And she had met with an accident. And I remember kind of really freaking out. And somehow she managed to maybe pick up another car. I wasn't sure, but you.
Yeah. I did.
And she was bleeding. We rushed to the hospital, and I think we spent a good chunk of that day there. And it was, you don't want such a situation. But I think after that, I realized, like, here is such a strong woman. She can go through anything. I feel like whatever life throws our way, like we can tackle it together. This was January 2020, right before COVID, and there were additional challenges there. And I think going through that period together gave me such immense confidence.
When I was really sure about Rahul, it wasn't like one aha moment, but I also remember the period being around somewhere December, January of the same time period. And I think it was more related to how many conversations we'd had, what I learned about him as a person. I really resonated with what Rahul also said, where, I felt that where life threw things at us, we'll be able to deal with it together and deal with it with a solution-oriented mindset as opposed to, a kind of victim mentality, because that's not either of our ethics. And I think that, anything, the way I see it is, and the way I saw it even back then, is that everything in life is a risk. It just depends who you trust enough to take that risk with and make it really nice. The other thing also was that I think we had a very long courtship period in comparison to, say, traditional arranged marriages or something of the sort, where you meet somebody, have a couple of dates, and then by the third month, you're already married to the person. Rahul and I were, talking and dating for at least a year before he proposed. And I think that really helped us get to know each other, go through both ups and downs in the relationship, which helped us understand each other better. And that was, I think it brought a lot of stability even into our marriage, getting to know each other so much. I think I'll talk about the proposal, really. The proposal was very interesting. I think Rahul definitely nailed it on the head that I was not the kind of person who would like a grand thing. I prefer intimate, moments a lot more. However, how he went about it was very, very interesting. He almost picked up a quasi fight, and I was like, oh my God, this is going to just be the worst day of my life. And I was pretty much ready to be like, okay, see, this is not going to work out. Either him saying it or me saying it. And then suddenly he just goes down on one knee, and I'm like, what are you doing? And then he's like, will you marry me? And then I'm like, this is a joke, right? Because I just couldn't fathom how we went from almost having a fight to a proposal.
You're making me look so bad, by the way, here.
Oh, really?
No,
I shouldn't say this.
No, I'm kidding. Great.
But then, the answer was obviously yes. And then
I can just say, I was like, how about we move in together? And I knew Sanya was not a big fan of that. She's like, no, why do you keep bringing this up? I've told you my stance on this. I'm like, no, I think we need to move in together. And I'm adamant about this. And she got really pissed. And then I put the ring on the table and be like, okay, how about now?
I remember eating dessert before the main course. And I think that's the only time I've eaten dessert before the main course in my life.
That's what you remember from that day?
That's what I remember. No, just kidding.
That's great. It's a true blessing to have someone who always makes you aspire for more, whether it's professionally or my fashion sense. I remember when we were in Paris for Sanya's graduation, she's like, check out that guy and look at that sense of style. It would be very nice if you dressed in that way. I'm still working on it.
That's a question everybody loves to ask all married couples, and usually the answer is yes. But for me, the answer really was no. And I think part of the reason was because we had spent so much time trying to get to know each other. I actually recall this one instance when I was talking to my brother, and I must have been upset about something, and I was telling him, that everything's exactly the same as it was before marriage. There's absolutely no difference. And my brother just started laughing and saying, Sanya, most people complain that they ordered a tiramisu, but then they got a cheesecake. And here you are, you've got a tiramisu, and you ordered a tiramisu, but you're still complaining.
The tiramisu. It really helps to be radically authentic because it may take time. And, certain matches may not be your or the other person's cup of tea. But if you are just who you are, then, it does feel rather seamless. And that's been the case with every major milestone. 2 months ago, our son was born, and it's been another set of challenges. But we've been able to manage that.
So I definitely think we have certain rituals and rules around our relationship. I think one of the easiest ones, and this actually is something that works tremendously well. All couples fight, right? We fight. We do. A fair amount. Well, a little bit. We try to make it a rule never to go to bed upset with each other. We will try to talk it out. And I think that communication ends up being really, really helpful. I think another thing is that because both Rahul and I have very intense work hours and we both work 6 days a week. So, really making sure that we take out the time to make each other a priority. I think that is also something that works well for us. We also have done a bunch of other things like, journal together, go on long walks together. And these just kind of help us spend quality time with each other while also making sure that, our communication with each other is really something that's taking place well.
And we always go back to our spreadsheets for everything, whether it's house management
that's true.
or life OKRs. When we had to name our son, we also kind of listed out the parameters. We were like, it has to be easy to pronounce for both Indians and foreigners. It has to be mellifluous. It has to have a deep meaning.
Yeah.
And there's one more.
Short.
And it has to be short, And then we listed a bunch and like scored them. So I think the way we approach problems is very similar. And I think that helps a lot. One of my favorite moments, so Sanya's not big on American sports, and having grown up in the US, every Sunday is football day, American football day. And we were there last year, and our entire family had gathered for the Super Bowl. And this is such a small thing, but I was so touched. Sanya like read up on American football the entire day, and she hadn't told me so much. And then like we're watching and she's like, oh wow, that's a first down, or why is he running the ball so much? He should pass. And it was such a small but beautiful moment seeing my wife appreciate the Super Bowl.
I think there's a lot of ways that we're similar. I think we have very similar emotional and I guess behavior as well. Maybe I'll talk about when we get upset, right? We both are very, very similar in how we get upset. We can get angry really quickly, and it just takes equally quickly for it to come down. And just being able to understand that with each other is very useful. I also think that we're also different in some ways. Rahul is somebody, we have different interests as well, so for instance, Rahul loves stand-up comedy and can watch stand-up comedy for hours, whereas I'm much more like, let me watch that serious little documentary, or well, that's not true, you also like the serious documentaries, to be honest, but or I'll be watching like Scooby-Doo sometimes. This is a horrible disclosure of mine, but I can't expect him to be watching Scooby-Doo with me, to be fair. So in terms of some of our interests, we're fairly different.
No, I think like there's so many differences in terms of our musical preferences, in terms of what we like to watch. There are some overlaps, like World War II documentaries, but I think it ends there. But I think that's wonderful. Like there need to be certain shared beliefs and values, but you want each person to bring something new and open up new worlds. Like I've learned so much about the food industry. I've learned so much about European fashion as well. There's certain things in my wardrobe I would never have purchased on my own, but now that I start to wear them, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So I think that combination of shared values and dissimilar interests has worked very well for us.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I think it's really important, to realize that when you're in a relationship, it's the two of you, but that's also two separate individuals together. So you can't suddenly morph yourself into being an exact replica of what the other person is or what the other person likes, because you're still your independent identity. And I think that's something we both have been able to do in the relationship, is realize that there's three units. There's Rahul as Rahul, Sanya as Sanya, and then there's the two of them as a couple, which I think has worked really well for us. I think he really has no ego as a person. I think he's one of the most compassionate people I've met. And it's very heartwarming to see somebody like that, because it's not, Rahul doesn't bring that just to you or me, or he brings it to everybody, and he's very consistent in how he behaves. I often tell individuals at his office when they ask me, how is Rahul at home? And I'm like, he's exactly the same as you find him in the office. There's really no difference. So
like OKRs.
So I think my favorite thing about him is really that he's a very compassionate person, has absolutely no ego.
I think with Sanya, it's that she's comfortable in any setting. Like we can be taking a walk and having parathas off the side of the road and enjoying that, or having a Michelin star meal, and she's just incredibly grounded, and wants to experience all that life has to offer. And I think that's something I'm looking for as well. And it's a journey we've begun together, and we look forward to the next stages. I mean, definitely with the birth of our son, it's a lot of those everyday moments of waking up at 6. Okay, you got this, I got that. All right, I'll steam up the milk and let's try to figure out what's making him cry. So I think when you find someone you enjoy the mundane with, like, okay, I don't mind waking up in the middle of the night and solving this problem together. I think that's definitely been a highlight. And the little things Sanya does, she takes videos of our newborn, and she provides her own voiceover that's super cute. She's like, "Hi, Papa, good morning." And I've memorized them all. I watch them throughout the day. There's so many of these moments that make our relationship come alive.
I think Rahul and I have been together for about 4.5 years now, so there are too many best moments for us. But I think one of them for me is definitely, some of them have to really do around us traveling together. I mean, Rahul is a very, very easy person to get along with. And I like the fact that when we were in Paris, Rahul was, we just did not use any other mode of transport. We used to walk like 40,000 steps a day and soak in the city. And Rahul was very, very embracing of that. And at the same time, we've had beach bum vacations in Maldives where, Rahul's able to embrace that as well. So I think generally a lot of some of my best moments with him are around there as well.
What about the museum story?
So I remember before going to Paris, I chalked out a full agenda of where all we will go and shoved in a lot of museums that we would see. And while I'm making the agenda and walking Rahul through it, he's like, "Sanya, there's too many museums, you've got L'Orangerie, Musée d'Orsay, you've got Louvre, you've got so much stuff going on. We're not going to L'Orangerie." And I'm like, okay.
What is this?
And we end up going there anyway. And once we get there, that's where Monet's water lilies are. And he's like, "Oh my God, I love this." And pretty much and I was like, "Well, you wanted to strike it off our list." And he's like, "No, I'm so glad you brought me here." And this is generally the theme of a few things in our lives, no?
You forgot, I sat on the floor.
Yeah, you sat on the floor, you meditated a little bit, and just really appreciated the museum and water lilies. So it was nice.
But I think that this is what I was talking about in terms of diverse interests. Like, I have my patterns, and you have to know yourself, but you have to always be open to something new. Even if it sounds like, okay, there's the Louvre, why would we do the Louvre and L'Orangerie, right? Doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't make any sense. Those European boots that people that are super in fashion right now. The first time I saw that, I was like, I'm not going to wear this. Now I love it. So I think you have to know yourself, but always be open to new experiences.